Hello, Marco. You are well known in the community, the BI community around the world. You may know that in France, we have recorded a series of meetups regarding data modeling, and we have some bonus tracks with different people. I had the chance to interview Phil Simark a few weeks ago, and now thank you to take time to answer some questions for the French and the worldwide community regarding data modeling. But first of all, who are you? Everybody knows you, but maybe it's interesting to introduce you again.
It's very simple. My name is Marco Russo. I work at SQLBI, where we produce content about DAX data modeling and technologies for Microsoft Business Intelligence. We are focused on the semantic model, so the data model, all the attributes that you can define in the semantic model, and of course the DAX language.
Good. So first question, How do you define data modeling?
Well, the data model, the best way I can define, so first of all, data modeling can mean different things, but in general, it's a way to, let's say, create a representation of the real world in data. Now, you could have different type of data modeling. For example, if you have to create a data model for online web where you get orders and you make purchases, you have shipment, you do what is called the OLTP way. So everything should be normalized and something like that. If you do data modeling for analytics, which is what we do, usually we want to create a model that is not fully normalized, but has a particular way to create a data model. So these are technicalities, but I think that both ways and other techniques of data modeling achieve the goal of representing in data what you have in the real world. That's what you want to do.
Yes, it's a good definition. And what was your first data model? So maybe it's a long time ago in analytical way. So when was it? How did it go?
Well, so it depends on what you mean for data model. So I try to restrict this to the semantic models. Okay, so because otherwise it would be a too long story. So the first version I used of analysis services was called OLAP services in OLAP server in SQL Server, and we created a model to represent the service for conferences and courses. So that was the very first one, and also other one that are more commercial. But I remember that one because it was the first one that was non-trivial, because you typically have like the evaluation of the training or of the session. Then you have the challenge of having not just sums, right? So you have to do averages, you have to decide what to do for different sessions in a conference and so on. So those were the challenges we had at the time.
Okay, so it did well. So your first model was good, or did you
Probably if I look at the model today, I will be embarrassed. But yeah, it worked. Okay, it worked.
Perfect. So maybe it's the first thing. It worked. So it's important. So regarding So regarding a project, what is your approach concerning data modeling? How do you start, or how do you handle the?
So the first thing I do, so let's say, so let me just do a small digression. For many years, I've been a consultant, and not that I'm not a consultant. I still think I'm a consultant, but in reality, I spend most of the time today creating content and managing SQLBI and OKVids and other companies. But for many years, I had customers, and also I work directly in projects where I had to implement models. Now we call them semantic models. We call them data models, data marts, whatever. And the first thing I think the first thing is better to do is to forget what you have in data. So the primary goal is to serve the business users, which means that first of all, you have to ask, okay, what do you want to analyze? What are your business entities? And conceptually, theoretically, you could design a semantic model without having any idea about what your data source is or what your data sources are. That's the best way to design a data model, because this way you design the data model tailored on the business requirements, not on the data that you have. Because if you start from the data that you have, you tend to include everything, also those information that are not relevant, and you spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to connect the dots. And when you discover that 90% of the data that you have are not needed, you discover you spend 90% of your time on something that was completely useless. So that's where I would start. What is the business requirement, and not what is the data that you have?
And it's fun because it's one of the most important advice that we shared with all the team working on the series of meetups. So
I didn't know. I didn't know. So
it's good to be aligned and to see that experts say that it's the good way, the right way to do it. So regarding the concepts around data modeling, all the vocabulary, all the things we have to know, to learn, what is for you the hardest concept to understand?
Well, so many things, but if we just talk about data modeling in general, so not specific for a particular product, I think that conceptually, the more difficult concepts are, it's a mix. The relationships between business entities and the granularity of the tables that you use to implement those relationships. What do I mean? Because otherwise it's too generic. Even people who have a knowledge about relational databases and normalized databases, sometimes they don't immediately get the idea of designing a model where you define the cardinality of the table, which is let's say, the identity of a business entity, right? So the business entity is the customer, or is the group of customers, or is the location of the customer, which means that the customer can have multiple locations. So identifying the granularity of the business entity you want to manage has as a consequence that you also drive how you define the relationships and you connect the dots in your data model. When you approach the normalized model, you don't care, because you continue to add tables and relationships. But when you define a data model for the analytics, actually you have to be much more, let's say, you have to look at the future much more. You have to think about what my user will do, because changing the data model in an analytical application is relatively easy. But especially adding granularities in an in an OLTP database is relatively easy. Adding granularity in an analytical model is the hardest challenge that you could have. And especially if you don't want to break existing reports, you have to think really, really carefully about what you're doing. And so for both people that are new to data modeling in general, so they don't even know relational databases, or people who come from, regular third normal form for relational databases, they could struggle because it's a different way of thinking. I'm so used to that. So this is natural, right? So everybody should work this way. But actually, I remember that at the beginning of my career, because I came from programming and regular normalized databases, but also having many students over these years, I found that this is something that is relatively simple once you get used to that. But at the beginning, is a very hard challenge, just because it seems so easy. Oh, it's just another table. Well, but your choice has consequences over time. And understanding the consequences that you could have over time means that you either completely trust your tutor. Your tutor says, don't do that, do this. And you, okay, I don't know why, but I accept that. Or you pay with your blood or many hours lost the price of the mistakes in data modeling, because every mistake you make has a bigger price in the future. You could break reports, you could break ETLs, you could break formulas, you could break so many things because you didn't think in advance what was the real exact granularity of that relationship. That could have big consequences.
You need to think in multi-dimension, which is difficult.
Yeah, I mean, but I would try to be not technical. If you say multidimensional, because we have a common knowledge about a certain technology that is called OLAP, then now we have a tabular. I mean, but you could have other systems. It doesn't change. The thing is that when you define a semantic model, you define a conceptual representation of the reality, right? So the reality is people, products, whatever, right? And you define an abstract model that represents what you want to analyze from your point of view. Okay, your point of view, which is the point of view of the business, is an abstraction over the reality. Now, when you create a data model, you try to model that abstraction in data. The problem is that what the business has in mind, first of all, could change over time, and second, is a particular way of looking at the business, right? For example, I mean, think about simple things. It's not technical. How many customers do you have? It's a simple question, right? But what does it mean? Does it mean how many unique company names you have, or how many unique people that interact with you, how many unique customers IDs you have, or customer code? What if they have different shipment addresses? And be careful, because there is not a single answer that is good. Depending on the business, it's different. Within the same company, the same question has different answers. Logistics, a customer is a shipment location. Finance, a customer is someone who pays. And now you have, in the same ERP, in the same company, two different definitions for the very same measure. So that's the problem. It's not technical. The problem is not technical. Now, when it comes to the semantic model, so first you have to understand these things. And second, you have to create the data model that can answer the question quickly and is in a simple way. We always say, the better the model, the lower the DAX code that you have to write. Because when you write DAX code, you actually create some calculation at runtime that sometimes is needed. You want to compare, I don't know, the current month with the previous, with the same month in the previous year. That's a runtime calculation, right? You cannot pre-calculate this. But many other things can be just a sum, or max, or distinct count. So very, very simple formula. But in order to do that, you have to create the proper data model. If your formula is, yes, I have to count the customer, but I have to exclude those rows that have this ID, but then I have to, if you start writing this code, there is some problem in your model. That's my point of view, right?
Yeah, totally agree. And regarding, because you said that you are part consultant, so you see a lot of customers, a lot of implementation from experts, from beginners. What is the most common mistake you see at customers?
Well, they don't read. They don't. It's simple. They start implementing. Oh, so many. Okay, so I would say that to me it's surprising when I receive, I would say 80% of the times, 80% is a good estimation, I guess. 80% of the times, I just have to forward a link to an article I wrote.
Yeah.
Which means that you didn't do your homework. I mean, if you typed something and you searched it quick, if you spent enough time searching, you would probably find that. And of course, you might say, well, but I don't want to study everything in advance. True, but spending months in implementing a solution, finding a problem, and realizing that you completely missed an important point in your, basic education about the data model, or how DAX works, or Power BI, or something like that. I mean, we could find something in the middle, right? You don't. When I say months, I have seen several times projects where many people spent many months, not just in the semantic model, but also in the complete ETL, right? So in ingestion, transformation, and then preparation, data prep, whatever. Right? You see the full pipeline. If you make a certain changes, they affect everything, right? And if certain mistakes, especially in data modeling, fixing DAX formula is easy. If you wrote a DAX formula that is not good, but the model is good, that's easy. We will solve it. 1 hour, we will solve it. No problems. But the problem in the model, that's a serious issue, because I can say, oh, look, you have to do this. I show you an example. I can draw an example in Excel or in DAX, because in Excel, I can easily, create a table A, B, C. I put a few rows to explain how the model should work. Now you have to do your homework. And sometimes they spend weeks fixing that.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is that, come on, I mean, that was not hard to understand if you did your homework in advance. So when I say they don't read, it's because they start implementing something, assuming they know what to do, without having done any homework. Do a proof of concept, right? A proof of concept is what? You can use Power BI Desktop. I can make any invention of I can invent the data. I can literally invent the data. And if the model works and provide a good result, then the other issue is, will it scale up? Okay, populate the data. Tell me data. I mean, you don't have to get to use the real data if it is expensive to transform all data, but you have an idea about, will you have 1,000 customers or 1 million customers? Or you have this nice complex security requirements. Did you test it? Did you test it with the real amount of customers you have? Because when you test with 2 customers, we have this model. It worked well with 10 customers, but now that we have, or 10 users, now that we have 10,000 users, it's very slow. And I say, of course.
Yeah.
Because you used an approach that it cannot scale, right? And again, if you read everything, right? If you read all our books, all our articles, probably you will know that. And I get, okay, you cannot read everything in advance, but between reading, having a complete full knowledge of everything and having zero, there should be something in the middle. And before spending months and months and months of many people, I would try to balance that. So that's as I don't think there is a single mistake that is a big mistake, but and I'm not just saying our content. Okay, in general, there are many sources, starting from the Microsoft document. The Microsoft documentation improved a lot in the last few years. Okay, it's not perfect, but it, compared to what we had at, in 2015 at the beginning of Power BI, wow, that's a completely different story now. So
clear. So I have some funny question for you. Very easy. Do you prefer Star-Schema or OBT, one big table?
So OBT is not a schema, right? So it's just I get it. For simple, I mean, if you have OBT, you just need Excel, and if the table is large, you don't need Excel. But to be honest, you don't have a complex problem. You might have a data volume problem, but your problem is easy. Okay, is simple. It's not complex, right? But the real world is not one big table. That's the point. The real world is far from that. Think about this. I mean, everybody has, most of the people, okay, 90% of the people have a bank account. Many people, not everyone, but many people have a shared bank account. And a shared bank account means that 2 people own the same money. What does it mean? They have 50%, 50%? No, they can have access to the same account. Now, what is the value of, what is the net, what is the amount of money you have? You sum your accounts. Let's say that husband and wife have the same account. Good. So husband has 10,000. Good. What is the wife asset? Wife has a 12,000 because she has a 10,000 with the husband and 2,000 in account that she has alone. Good. So what is the availability for the family? 12,000. Well, it's not the sum, but why the why? Okay, let's say that one has 11,000, one 12,000, but they share only 10,000. What is the total amount of the family? 13,000. How do you model it in OBT? And this is the simplest. And it's not that this, Marco. This is, you always do this example. I make this example for the simple reason because it's the simplest one that everybody can understand. But as soon as you move in the enterprise, we want to start with the education. What happens when you have multiple teachers for a single training, for a single course in a university? What happens when you have, so there are so many examples I can make in many different industries. But of course, the more I go specific in one industry, the more the example is better for that particular industry, but not clear for other industries. So, but one big table is, I mean, if you have one big table as a problem, okay, you don't need anything. You just need Excel. Or a bigger Excel if it is more than 1 minute. That's it. It's easy.
It's a good explanation or a good argumentation regarding these two trends. Because you're right, one big table, there's no modelization because there's just one big table. Another question, maybe more difficult. Do you prefer Kimball, or Inmon?
They serve two different purposes. Kimball for data mart, Inmon for data warehouse. Nowadays, data warehouse is no longer, let's say, a trend topic. I get it. And Inmon, in general, if you follow Inmon, buy the books, as we say, it's very expensive. I get it. But in principle, the Star-Schema is not the best solution for storing your single version of the truth over time. For a number of technical details, I would love, but this would take a few hours. But let's say the Kimball is good for the semantic model that you want to show to the user. It is not the best way to accumulate data and to create what we call the single version of the truth, from which you derive all the data marts or the semantic models. So conceptually, you should have, for a big company, for an enterprise, one data warehouse and multiple data marts. So if you follow this classic architecture, Kimball for the data warehouse and Inmon for the data mart in general, then I will probably not do exactly that. I will do some variation of both, but conceptually that, yes. Variation because, for example, if I use Power BI, I don't need surrogate keys for the data mart. Oh, but Kimball said you have to. I know, but believe me, in Power BI is not needed. For Kimball, we don't do a few things that Kimball said because it's so expensive, but we do something else. So, I mean, we should enter into the detail. Many years, not many, but several years ago, we published a white paper, which is called the SQLBI methodology, where we explained our point of view, which is still good. I mean, there is nothing that, the specific implementation of a few parts, that could be different, but conceptually, the way we divide the layers and the logic of the transformation is still the same. And it's still good, I think.
Good. What is your favorite Power BI feature related to data modeling?
Okay, so I'm laughing because...
it can be a language.
I know, sure. No, I know, but because my favorite feature today is a feature that we said to not use, okay? Bidirectional filters in the relationships and many-to-many cardinality relationships are by far the best feature in Power BI because they open the door to complex data modeling. Now, when we suggest don't use those features, it's not because they should not be used, but because they could be dangerous if they are used when you don't need them, right? But the fact that I have them is very powerful. Okay, so I want to use them when I need them. Bidirectional filter, for example, is something that we use all the time, but just we don't enable them in the model. We enable them in the measure because we want to control it. But again, we're using it. The many-to-many cardinality relationship is something that is absolutely important, especially when you create composite model. Composite model is a feature. Today I take it for granted, but is revolutionary, and no one else has something even just comparable. Of course, you have to use the right way. I have seen several scenarios where composite models are misused, are abused, I would say, and they are very slow. But if you understand how they work, and you understand how you can leverage them, it's extremely powerful. It's extremely powerful.
Yes, with great power need great responsibility. You know the.
Yeah, I mean it's. I mean, if you have a 747, right? It's huge jet. It requires a pilot with a lot of experience, but it travels long distances with a lot of people, right? So it's good. You just don't use it. If you just have to go, if you have to cross the square, you don't. You walk. You don't even get the car, right?
Yes, I have the same analogy with a truck and Fiat Cinquecento, for example.
That's another good analogy. Yes.
Yes.
You have to use the right tool for the right purpose. So those tools exist for certain problems. You might not have that problem, so then you don't have to use them. For how much I love to go in a helicopter, I don't have one and I don't need one, but I love it. I mean, if I have an it's fun, right? It's good.
Yes. Right.
If you have to, manage an emergency, you need it, right? So because you want to go there and you save people with the helicopter, but for fun, yeah, probably I love it, but I don't have one.
Yes.
It is just fun to ride, but
good. The last fun question, and after there will be a last question just after, but can you say that sentence, Data Vault is not an analytical modeling pattern?
I mean, what does it mean? I mean, Data Vault is a methodology similar to, as a goal, similar to Inmon, right? To store data for the long term. But clearly, you don't extract data from that type of model easily for doing your reporting. You still have to do a lot, just like in Kimball. Okay, Kimball and Data Vault, they are not designed to create reports easily. If this is what we mean. So I don't know exactly what you mean by analytical modeling pattern. I know companies that have successfully implemented Data Vault, but those companies then they have to do other transformation to create the semantic model. So I don't want to talk too much about the data warehousing part because it's not an area where I would feel confident to say, oh, I know what works, I know what doesn't work. But I have seen successful stories in both cases and unsuccessful stories in both cases. So
okay, clear. It's clear. And to finish, what is your best advice for learning and mastering data modeling for the people who want to start or to become expert in data modeling?
So the very first thing that you have to do is to get a problem that you know well and model it, but possibly having some data. Let me make some example, otherwise it's too vague. Let's say that I like football and I love, I don't know, Champions League or the Champions League, right? UEFA Champions League is a tournament for, I mean, we are in Europe, so for France it's easy because you know what I'm talking about, but outside of Europe, they might not be aware. So it's just a tournament where different football teams from different countries play against each other. And there are, several tournaments. So there are several stages where, there is like a sort of tournament. Then the first two teams of each tournament go in quarterfinal or semifinal, something like that. So the thing is, if you start to think about the problem, okay, let's say you want to analyze the team, then the team has players, then there are goals, there are goalkeepers, there are referees, there are location, there is the ranking. So if you start to think about the problem, you can think about the problem. Okay, imagine you have a system where you just enter data about the results and you store this data. Okay, third normal form. But let's ignore that. Let's say that you just want to do some analysis. Now you will realize that whatever analysis you want to do, you have a few business entities: the player, the team, the stadium, for example, and you can start to model them, right? And then you have to think, okay, what do I want to create in my reports? I want to create reports for the team. I want to create historical reports, many years, many tournaments, and so on. And you start to create a model for the data. I'm talking about this because you don't have the data, no problem. You just Google it, and now with ChatGPT, it's incredible. You can literally create a data set from scratch. You ask ChatGPT, okay, create a table with this, and you get the table. Now, it is a mistake there. Who cares? Because you want to create a model, right? So even if, in case the answer is, let's say, hallucinated a little bit, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that if the table makes sense, you can start getting the table and import the table. You can get a CSV file or something like that, and you start creating your model in Power BI. If you have Power BI Desktop is free. So that's the best way. Now, as soon as you face the real problem of having something that you want to create, you will face the issue that if you create just one report, you could have only one table. But if you want to create a data model that satisfies 3 different reports, one for the team, one for the player, one for the stadium, you will realize that, well, wait a minute, I can, if I create the 3 different tables, one for each report, I start to duplicate data. This is not what I want. I want to create a single model that can answer different questions. And you immediately face the problem of data modeling, right? Now, I'm not in football. Fine. Chess, right? Same thing. Or you like, I don't know, you like dogs, and you can do this for the dog.
Yeah.
I mean, there is an infinite amount of examples we could extract, and you don't need the data. You just need to create the model, and then you have to be able, because you know the domain, you know the concepts, you're able to just invent data, or with some LLM, you can help. You can ask the LLM to create data for you if you want. Now, you save a lot of time with this technique.
Good. So your advice is to manipulate. It's to have the hands on a small project. It can be a side project to learn the concept and the modeling.
Yes, and my point is that don't look too far. Don't look for oh, I have to find an association that will need this for in the real world. No. Just do something for you, because you will face the reality that first you have to ask the right business question and actually define the type of analysis that you want is the biggest challenge. Once you have a clear idea about what you want to obtain, then you know the next step is to create a data model. But without that, it's just an exercise that doesn't move you very, very forward. So that's the best thing. Yes, create something for yourself, but something that you understand, so that you don't need someone else to move forward. You have to be able to play different roles, the analyst and the user at the same time. And so this way you understand both faces, the 2 sides of the same problem.
Perfect. Good. So many thanks for your time, Marco. I think it was very insightful for the community and the community everywhere in the world. We will I will put the subtitles in French for the French people. But thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your approach, vision, and your good advices for the community. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.